So, to know your rights, we will be covering a recent news story out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, where officers shot a black man during a no-knock warrant. If this sounds interesting to you, please take a moment and subscribe to our channel. By the way, if you love retro video games as much as I do, please check out our new YouTube channel called Retro Gaming Central. Now, let's take a deep dive on this tragic news story out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. According to body cam footage published Tuesday night, Minneapolis police officers carefully slipped a key into an apartment door before bursting through the doorway exclaiming, "Police! Search warrant!" In the seconds that followed, Amir Locke, a black man, was shot dead in the apartment. The man's family said he was in legal possession of his gun and that no search warrant for him had been issued prior to this intrusion. The warrant that had been issued was for an ongoing homicide investigation. This tragic shooting raises questions about no-knock warrants, and this police department has already been criticized about using them. On Friday, Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman revealed that he asked Attorney General Keith Ellison to investigate this shooting. A full and detailed investigation will be conducted with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, according to Mr. Freeman. We will then decide jointly, depending on the law and the evidence, whether to file criminal charges against any of the officers involved. In a second statement, Mr. Ellison stated that Amir Locke's life mattered and it should not have been taken so tragically. Mr. Locke was only 22 years old and had a bright future ahead of him. His family and acquaintances must now live without him. Mr. Locke's parents described their son as a law-abiding person who appreciated law enforcement, while community leaders and gun rights groups sought transparency and accountability in this case. Minnesota Governor Walz issued a declaration of sympathy towards the family and friends of Mr. Locke. Over a year ago, Minnesota passed statewide restrictions on no-knock warrants. The governor added, calling for further adjustments to the police policy and practices related to search warrant executions. Amir Locke's death highlights the need for more reform, according to the governor. To keep everyone informed, Mr. Locke's parents held a virtual press conference with civil rights attorney Ben Crump and other lawyers. "A mother should never have to bury her child," said Mr. Locke's mother, Karen Wells. Miss Wells swore to fight every day for justice for her son. Late on Friday afternoon, Miss Wells demanded that the officer who shot her son be charged and fired. "No lawful gun owner could have survived this situation," said family attorney Jeff Storms. According to family attorneys, the officers claim that they announced their arrival at the threshold, but as you've seen on the body cam, there is no such announcement. They storm in without identifying themselves, leaving Amir with no opportunity to flee. The Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus stated that Mr. Locke's death was absolutely avoidable. Mr. Locke reached for a lawful firearm in the means of self-defense as he sought to grasp what was taking place, stated Rob Doerr, a spokesperson with the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. Community activists and Mr. Locke's family lawyers stated that this incident proves that prior reforms after police officers killed George Floyd have not gone far enough. Officers from the Minnesota Police Department were convicted in the deaths of George Floyd in May of 2020. Nationwide demonstration and calls for police reform erupted after police officers in Minnesota killed George Floyd, and officers in Kentucky fatally shot Breonna Taylor during a no-knock warrant. Miss Taylor's death caused other communities to ban or restrict no-knock warrants and other forceful entry operations. Minnesota changed its no-knock ordinance last summer to reduce the chances of tragic results. Officials stated officers must disclose their presence and purpose before executing a search warrant, except in hostage situations. Mr. Storm said the city of Minneapolis limited the use of no-knock warrants to reduce the likelihood of tragic consequences. Amir Locke and his family experienced the worst possible outcome less than 2 years after these changes went into effect. Minnesota officers were executing a search warrant related to a homicide investigation in nearby St. Paul. According to interim police chief Amelia Huffman, it is unclear if or how Mr. Locke is connected to the St. Paul investigation. She stated this traumatic event will have long-lasting effects. "A young man died and his family and friends will mourn it for a long time. This was a very sobering moment for Chief Huffman." The body cam footage shows officers quickly identifying a man inside the apartment. According to body cam footage, at 6:48 in the morning, a man is seen covered by a blanket near the back of a couch. Awoken from sleep, the man glances up to see individuals all around him. He stands up, still shrouded in the blanket, holding a gun. Officers then fired 3 shots that struck Mr. Locke. A screenshot from the body cam footage shows Mr. Locke's firearm more clearly. In the direction the barrel emerges from the blanket, Chief Huffman claims the officers were just outside the area of fire. It can't be determined where the firearm was pointed based on the short footage and images supplied, but hopefully more body cam footage from other responding officers will draw a clearer picture. The video was released in 3 different speeds, 1 in real time and 2 modified by the City Police Department. In total, 14 seconds pass from the moment the police enter till Mr. Locke is shot. Chief Huffman stated, as the officers drew closer, you can see the gun barrel emerge from the blanket along with the figure. It was a split-second decision for the officer to assess the situation and determine if there was an articulable threat of immediate injury, great bodily harm, or death, and if he needed to act to protect himself or his teammates. According to the initial press release, police officers encountered an armed man with a handgun who pointed it towards officers. Minnesota police officer Mark Hanneman then shot and killed Mr. Locke. After the shooting, the officers carried Mr. Locke down to the lobby to meet paramedics, according to the police department. Mr. Locke was taken to Hennepin County Medical Center, where he passed away from his injuries. Mr. Locke died of several gunshot wounds, and it was ruled a homicide by the coroner. A spokesperson for the police department said Officer Henneman has been placed on administrative leave until the outcome of this inquiry. Multiple news agencies have tried unsuccessfully to contact Officer Henneman and the Minnesota Police Federation for comment. Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension was alerted immediately and is leading the criminal inquiry, Chief Huffman stated. The initial search warrant was issued in connection with the homicide investigation, according to a spokesperson of the St. Paul Police Department. Mr. Crump stated that Mr. Locke legally possessed a firearm at the time of his death and had multiple family members in law enforcement. He also added, like Breonna Taylor, Amir Locke's tragic death illustrates a pattern of no-knock warrants killing Black Americans. In March of 2020, officers in Louisville, Kentucky fatally shot Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old ER medical worker. Those officers were not indicted by a grand jury after the incident. One officer, Brett Hankinson, fired into a neighbor's apartment. He has pled not guilty and is awaiting trial. Well, YouTube, please jump down in the comments below and let me know what you think should be done to prevent tragic stories like this happening again in the future. Also, if you like this video, please take a moment and subscribe to our channel. Until the next episode of Know Your Rights, stay safe out there.